Hey guys, welcome to Mild Moments History. Tonight, we walk into a quiet corridor. The walls are damp, the lamps are low, and the smell, that sharp mix of iodine and rain, it never leaves this place. You've heard of doctors who saved lives, but have you ever heard of one who used his title to kill slowly, quietly, and always with a prescription? His hands were steady, his voice calm. He told his patients they'd feel better. And sometimes they did, but only for a moment. We're not diving into blood and horror tonight. We're stepping through old medical records, faded letters, and the sound of footsteps in a foggy alley. If this kind of storytelling helps you unwind, feel free to like the video and subscribe, but only if it truly brings you peace. Now close your eyes and let the world settle around you. The doctor is waiting, and he always makes house calls. You're walking down a cobbled street. Each stone holds the echo of a step long gone. There is no rush here. Everything feels wet, the edges of a street vendor's cloak, the curled corners of notices pasted to gaslight poles. This is London, 1879, and it's not a city of laughter. It's a city of fog, quiet shadows, and the lingering scent of disinfectant mixed with rain. Doctors are people you trust. They wear white coats, they speak softly. They hand you tiny bottles with careful hands and serious eyes. And when someone has a Scottish accent and a medical diploma, you listen, even if something about them feels slightly off. Thomas Neill Cream had that kind of presence. Tall, educated, always polite. A graduate of McGill with studies in Edinburgh and a degree in Chicago. But his voice was too quiet, and his smile never quite reached his eyes. At that time, there were no public hospitals for the poor. Only small, damp, dimly lit rooms below street level. Private practices that smelled of coal dust, fading hope, and old medicines. And women, especially those who worked the streets, came to these places. Not because they trusted doctors, but because there was no one else to trust. It was a world where dying from infection, from botched procedures, from fake pills, was just how the story ended. Thomas Cream knew that world. And he knew who would be believed and who wouldn't. When a man in a coat writes, "Take 2 drops every 4 hours," you don't question. Especially if you've already run out of choices. The first deaths were quiet. A young woman found collapsed in her rented room. Foam at the mouth, skin pale, a small bottle nearby. Another girl, barely breathing on a park bench. Next to her, a torn prescription, and a name, Dr. T.N. Cream. They were all young, all poor, all forgotten by morning. And they had all at some point sat in his examination chair. The police didn't investigate. They were busy, or tired, or used to it. And Cream, he began writing letters. Anonymous, typed letters to the authorities warning them about a killer, describing the deaths in disturbing detail, offering theory after theory, but never signing his name. Just a concerned citizen, just someone who wanted to help. Can you imagine a man who kills, then begs to be admired for noticing it? That was Thomas Cream, the man who played both murderer and savior. He called for justice against himself. And somehow, no one saw through the mask. Or maybe they just didn't want to look. This wasn't the world of clear motives or cold cases. This was a world of blurred lines, where pain looked like illness, where silence was called shame, where a dying girl might be called unfortunate, and her death natural. And Cream fit right in. He didn't need to hide, because no one was looking. They say the worst crime isn't murder. It's standing over the body, pretending to grieve. And that's what he did. Again and again, he was always there. Always near. Always the last one to say, "She'll feel better soon." So now, take a breath. Let the lamps burn low. Let the walls settle around you. Because the story hasn't even begun. In the next part, you'll see a letter. And the man who wrote it, warning the world about a killer no one would suspect. Himself. It was raining again, but not the kind of rain that makes people run. This one just lingered, like a chill that clings to fabric, to thoughts, to the corners of rooms no one cleans. The room itself was silent. A second-floor flat. Window cracked just enough to let in the breath of the fog. The curtains didn't move. The air didn't shift, but the bed was rumpled. The fire had gone cold, and the girl lying there very still had a bottle in her hand. Small, brown glass, the kind that makes a quiet clink when it taps the floor, but it hadn't fallen. Her fingers were locked around it like it was the last thing that made sense. Her name was Kate. No last name on the records, no family listed, only an address scribbled by the landlord, and a mention of stomach troubles 2 days before. The bottle still had a label, prescribed by Dr. T.N. Cream. The ink was fresh. The handwriting neat. 2 drops in water. Every 4 hours. There was no scream, no fight. No one heard her fall or gasp or call out, because death, when it's planned, rarely makes a sound. The landlady found her the next morning. She knocked once, then twice, then pushed the door open with a breathless mutter, already preparing her scolding voice. Instead, she paused, then backed away, not crying, just blinking too hard, as if the room had taken something from her too. The coroner came late. The police even later. No signs of violence, no blood, just another girl. The report said suspected laudanum overdose. Common in that district, easy to accept. A tired girl, alone, maybe sad, maybe sick. They didn't test the contents of the bottle. They didn't ask who prescribed it. They wrote one word in the margin, tragic, and they left. But the bottle stayed. Someone placed it on the mantel, as if keeping it there might explain something. It caught the light from the window, and deep inside, it barely visible, a tiny bubble rose, then stopped. It didn't feel like a mistake. It felt like an instruction, followed too well. 3 blocks away, a man sipped tea in a small, cluttered office. Books on anatomy, a photograph of a university hall, a brass lamp with a flickering wick. He stirred sugar, slowly, precisely, then took a letter from his desk drawer, typed, clean, to the chief inspector, Scotland Yard. There is a man in this city poisoning women. I fear he will not stop. I believe I know his methods. No name at the bottom, no fingerprints on the keys. He folded it carefully, licked the envelope, and smiled, not wide, just enough to make the skin around his eyes shift. Back in the flat, the rain hadn't stopped. The room still smelled of damp wool and something bitter, faint, but sharp. Someone had lit a match and blown it out too quickly. The landlady whispered to herself as she scrubbed the floor, not words, just noises, maybe to keep the silence away. She didn't notice that the label on the bottle was peeling, or that the corner of the prescription paper had a small, reddish smear, like a thumb pressed too hard. This was not the first time, but no one knew that yet. And no one asked. Because when a girl like Kate dies, people tend to step around her, like she was already fading before the poison did its work. Later, they would find more bottles, more girls, more names that no one remembered where. But here, in this room, was the first quiet clue. A small bottle, a curled prescription, and the faintest scent of almonds in the air. Bitter, sweet, and gone. The envelope was plain, cream-colored, stiff, folded with care. Not the kind a poor man buys. Not the kind anyone expects to receive, with a body count attached. It arrived on a Thursday, damp from the fog. The ink smudged just slightly on the corner, as if handled by someone in gloves. The clerk who opened it thought it was a complaint. That's what it looked like. A typed sheet, double-spaced, addressed to the Chief Inspector of Scotland Yard. But the words, they didn't scold. They warned, "Sir, there is a man in Lambeth poisoning women under the guise of a physician. He frequents the company of prostitutes, offering them comfort and relief. But they do not survive his care. No name, no return address, just facts. Too many facts. The inspector read it twice, then again, because it wasn't just a tip. It was a confession, dressed in a disguise. It described the exact symptoms of Kate's death, down to the foam at the mouth, the smell of bitter almond, the timing of her collapse. Information never released. Information no one should know, unless they were there. Unless they wrote the prescription. Still, they filed it. As anonymous, as curious, as worth noting, if pattern repeats, because no one suspects the man who's trying to help. Even if he's helping a little too precisely. Somewhere, a typewriter clicked again. Not in the police station, but in a room that smelled faintly of alcohol wipes and ink. Cream was working late. A patient had just left. He cleaned his hands twice, then sat down and began typing a second letter. This time, not to the police, but to the family of a girl named Ellen. He wrote, "She came to me unwell. I did what I could. I warned her against self-treatment. There was nothing more I could do. Her passing is a tragedy, but not my responsibility." He folded it neatly, no smudges this time, slipped it into an envelope, and smiled again. The same smile. That didn't reach his eyes. The mind of a killer, they say, often wants to be known. Not caught, but recognized. Appreciated. Cream didn't need fame. He needed acknowledgement. Someone to say, "You knew. You saw it. You understood the signs." Even if he'd planted the signs himself. Even if he was the signs. Down in the streets, another girl coughed behind a handkerchief. Another girl stepped into a clinic with too many bottles on the shelf. Another girl said, "I just want the pain to stop," to a man who offered her just enough kindness. Just enough. Back at Scotland Yard, the letter was placed into a file. Anonymous tip, it read. Then, scribbled beside it, possibly accurate. But the case was quiet again. There were no fresh bodies. Not yet. So no one followed up. Not really. Not until there were too many letters. And by then, the letters weren't warning anymore. They were boasting. In tidy paragraphs. In sentences that started sounding more and more like, "You'll never catch him," because you weren't even looking. And maybe that's exactly what Cream wanted. Not just to kill, but to be read. Not feared, but known. There would be more letters. Dozens. Each one typed, each one confident. But this one, the first, was the only one that still smelled faintly of ink and pride. Folded 3 times. Pressed just enough. Like a signature without a name. The hallway smelled like old plaster and cough syrup. It always did. That faint sweetness meant to mask something bitter underneath. There was a velvet curtain near the back. Deep red once now, more brown than anything. It hung between the waiting bench and the door to Dr. Cream's examination room. Most patients didn't get invited beyond it. But those who did, they remembered what they heard. Lucy worked down the street. Not officially, not on paper, but her face was known. And her coin was counted. She came in once with a stitched cut on her thigh. "Heal it fast," she said. "Work won't wait?" Cream smiled, listened, gave her something with a dropper. She left with less pain. But something stayed with her, not in the bottle, but in her ears. It was right after I stood up. I was still buttoning my coat, and I heard him laugh. Just one short, weird laugh. Not loud, but wrong. She told a friend. The friend told no one. Because laughter isn't a crime. And doctors are strange sometimes. They see too much. They get tired. Maybe it was a joke she didn't hear. That's what people told themselves. Over and over. Until someone else heard it too. There was a girl named Annie who cleaned offices. She once cleaned Cream's front hallway, just the front, never past the curtain. But one night, he asked if she could mop inside. "Spilled something," he said, voice flat. She stepped in. Saw no spill. Just a patient's scarf on the floor and a still warm chair. Then, from the next room, the sound, a laugh. This one was longer, still soft, still controlled, but deliberate, too pleased. She didn't clean past the curtain again. The thing about certain sounds is, you don't forget them, even when you try, especially when they come from the wrong moment. At the wrong pitch. From someone you're supposed to trust. Cream never joked, not in public. He rarely smiled at all. His face was calm, his voice restrained. But behind that curtain, something uncoiled. Something that liked the pause between giving the bottle and closing the door. And in that pause, he let out just enough of himself to stain the air. There was a nurse once, briefly hired to assist. She stayed 2 weeks. In her final note, scrawled on cheap paper, "The instruments are clean. The patients are not." And he laughs when no one should. She didn't leave a return address. When the inspector finally spoke to her, years later, she said, "I never saw him kill anyone, but I heard him after they left, and that was enough." The curtain is long gone now. No trace of the room. The building's been repurposed, repainted, renamed. But some say when it rains and the air feels heavy, that hallway echoes with something soft and sharp and slightly amused. Not quite a chuckle, not quite human, just a reminder that someone once stood behind a curtain and found joy in silence that followed pain. It was raining. Again. But this time, soft. More of a whisper than a storm. The kind of rain that taps gently on windows without ever demanding to be let in. Maggie sat in the corner of the waiting room, shawl pulled tight, boots still damp from the walk. Her nose was red, her hands restless. She wasn't sick, not exactly, just tired, cramping, dizzy. She thought maybe it was nerves, or hunger. She was used to working through it, but this time, the ache had lasted too long. So she came, not to be cured, just to rest. Dr. Cream looked her over like he did all the others. Measured, quiet, too quiet. He asked questions she didn't quite know how to answer. About where she lived, what she ate, whether she bled regularly. Then he opened a drawer, reached for the same bottle, the same dropper, the same script. But Maggie blinked. "No medicine," she said, voice small. "Just tea." "Do you have tea?" He paused. Mid-reach, something flickered across his face. Not annoyance, not concern. Just a flatness, as if someone had pressed pause on a moving reel. Then he smiled. Too late, too wide. "Of course," he said, and put the bottle away. She didn't know why she said it. Tea? It wasn't something she asked for often, but in that moment, her body wanted warmth more than cure. He brought her a chipped cup, not steaming, just warm. No sugar, no lemon. Still, she drank it gratefully. And when she left, she felt better. Not fixed, not well, but untouched. 3 days later, she passed the clinic again. Saw a woman stumble out, coughing. A scarf fell behind her. Maggie bent to pick it up. By the time she stood, the woman was gone. The next week, she read about a girl named Ellen. Dead in her room, empty bottle on the floor. Same doctor, same script. And suddenly, just tea didn't feel like a request. It felt like survival. Years later, when they came asking questions, Maggie said, "I didn't know anything." He was polite, cold, but polite. But something in me didn't want what he was offering. They asked if she remembered the tea. She did. She remembered it wasn't sweet, wasn't strong, just warm enough to keep her in the room without killing her. They told her later, no one else ever asked for tea. No one else ever left with just that. She hadn't escaped. Not really, just missed her turn. And she never went back. There's a kind of luck that doesn't feel like winning. It feels like stepping aside just before the carriage passes, like sneezing before you sip the cup, like asking for tea when someone else would have said yes to poison in disguise. His name was Constable Rourke. He had a stiff collar, tired boots, and a notebook always half full. He wasn't cruel. He wasn't careless. He was just overworked. And London was always a little too loud to hear just one cry at a time. Rourke first heard of Dr. Cream from a street call. Girl found dead in a boarding room. No signs of violence. No forced entry. He noted single bottle, labeled no witnesses, possible overdose. A day later, another call. Same neighborhood, same result, same kind of bottle. Rourke started a new page, but didn't turn in the old one. The sergeant asked, "Any connection?" Rourke shrugged. "Looks like coincidence." It was easier that way. Easier to file than to follow. Easier to blame chance than pattern. Besides, Dr. Cream had papers, degrees, a clean room, a quiet voice, polite manners, and polite men. Rourke had learned, caused the least paperwork. He met Cream once, a courtesy call, to inquire after the prescriptions. Not accuse, just make a presence. Cream offered tea. Rourke declined. Asked a few questions, jotted notes. "Do you remember the patient Ellen?" "Yes." "She seemed unwell already. Anything unusual?" "She was afraid." "But of her illness, I suppose." "Do you remember what you gave her tincture of opium?" "Standard." "Carefully dosed." Rourke nodded. Wrote no signs of misconduct. Office clean? Manners appropriate. And that was it. He went home that night. Sat by the fire. Watched his wife mend a button in silence. He didn't tell her about the bottle. Or the second body. Or the laugh one neighbor mentioned quickly, awkwardly, then took back. He just sat and didn't sleep well. There's a kind of tiredness that becomes policy. A shrug that hardens into protocol. A doubt that gets filed away as irrelevant. Rourke was good at writing what he saw, but not what he felt. And feelings didn't belong in reports anyway. Years later, when the truth came out, his own notebook was entered as evidence. The page he'd never submitted, the one with the first bottle. The first death, it was still in his desk. Folded at the edge. Blot of ink at the corner. Too neat, too late. Someone asked if he regretted anything. He said, "I thought if something was wrong, someone else would see it too." But no one else did. And by then, the count had grown. The bottles had multiplied. And the doctor still smiled, still offered tea. There are many kinds of silence. Some are gentle, some are cruel, and some wear a badge and carry a pen, and mean well, but never ask the right question. Her name was Josephine. No one used her full name. It was too long, too soft for the streets she walked. To most, she was just Jo. She had a laugh that curled at the edges. Not loud, just unexpected. The kind of laugh that made people smile before realizing the joke wasn't funny. She came to Dr. Cream's office one morning, eyes rimmed in red, voice husky from the cold. He didn't ask much, just nodded, wrote a prescription. 2 drops, he said. Warm water, rest afterward. 3 days later, she was dead. Or so they thought. The landlady filled out the death notice. Name Josephine T. Age approx. 26, caused sudden seizure. Doctor present T. N. Cream. The paper was filed. Stamped, stored, done. Except a week later, another form appeared. Same name, same address. Different date, different signature. This time, death by complications of the heart. Filed 2 days after the first one. By a different clerk. Still referencing the same patient. Still stamped. But something was off. Too similar. Too close. At first, the clerks blamed a copy error. It happens. People make mistakes. Names repeat. But the undertaker raised an eyebrow. I buried her once, he said. not twice. And someone at the records office scribbled a note, possible duplication or falsification. No follow-up. The curious part, neither record listed a family. Neither listed who requested the death certificate, but both had one thing in common: Dr. T. N. Cream. Years later, when someone reopened the case, they looked at the handwriting. The signature on the second certificate was neater, more deliberate, too perfect, almost like someone had time to practice, almost like it wasn't rushed by grief, but planned to overwrite something or someone. No one knows for sure why there were two death records. Maybe it was just bureaucracy. Maybe it was just a clerk who filed the same name twice. Or maybe Joe didn't die the first time. Maybe she woke up, coughed, screamed, and maybe someone decided that wouldn't do. There's a strange silence in paperwork. It folds around the truth, smooths it, flattens it, files it, until even a death can be overwritten, and no one protests. Because paper doesn't speak, and the dead don't correct their own records. In the box, where both certificates now sit, tucked behind a yellowing ledger, there's a third slip. Blank, unfilled, unclaimed, still waiting, maybe, for the truth to find a pen. It was found under a stairwell, not hidden, not placed, just left. Someone had swept this corridor, but missed that one spot. A shadowed corner behind a crooked banister, next to a scuffed boot mark and a candy wrapper. It didn't roll. It didn't shine. It simply sat there. A bottle, small, amber glass, no label, no cork, just the faintest residue along the rim. Something oily, something bitter. The woman who found it worked nights cleaning the building. She didn't recognize it as medicine, but she didn't throw it out either. She brought it home, placed it on her windowsill. Later, she would say, it felt wrong, like something that still remembered being used. She never touched it again. Word got around, not officially, just among tenants. A bottle, no name. Not from the clinic, not from the grocer, not from the apothecary. No one claimed it. No one remembered dropping it. And yet, someone had to have carried it. Someone had to have opened it. Because when the inspector finally took it in, the chemist found residue inside. Hydrocyanic acid. Faint, but real. Enough to kill if taken whole, or quietly weaken if given in sips. There was no crime scene, no corpse nearby, no report of a missing girl, just a bottle. One that didn't belong anywhere, but had clearly done something. Something finished, something final. They checked the records, no prescription filed, no recent patients connected, no initials etched at the bottom, but the shape, the style of the glass was identical to those found in Dr. Cream's office. And one nurse, long retired, said he ordered his bottles in bulk, all the same size. No labels until he wrote them by hand. This one never got its label, or maybe it lost it. No one remembered who last walked that hallway. But the room nearest the stairwell had been vacant for days. The landlady said the girl left in a hurry. No goodbye, no rent paid, no things taken. Just a folded sheet, a damp pillow, and a space where someone used to be. The bottle remained at the station for a while, filed as unclaimed, later evidence, eventually unresolved. It sat on a shelf for years, dust collecting like soft regret. Then it was moved, then lost. Then no one remembered where it had gone. But someone did remember. Not the bottle itself, but the feeling it left. That strange hush around it. The way people stepped past it without realizing. The way it seemed to have waited for someone, and then been left behind. Sometimes silence comes in glass, with no name, no witness, no sound. Just a trace, a bitter aftertaste, and a weight that doesn't belong to anyone, but also refuses to leave. Her name was Clara, but most just called her Claire with the fast mouth. Not cruelly, just knowingly. She spoke quickly, thought faster, and had the kind of laugh that made secrets loosen themselves. People liked her, even when they shouldn't. She wasn't a patient of Dr. Cream. She was a watcher. Worked at the tea shop 2 doors down. From her counter, she saw who entered his practice, who came out, and who didn't. She noticed patterns. Who looked pale, who walked with a limp, who smiled on the way in, but not on the way out. And eventually, she started to talk. It began as gossip, soft, spilled over cups of lukewarm milk tea. Funny how the pretty ones always go in alone. He never locks the door behind him. He just waits, smiling. That tall girl with the freckled arms, she hasn't been back. Then her words grew sharper. Not cruel, just too close. Too detailed. That bottle wasn't sealed. She said the drops made her dizzier, not better. He touches the drawer before he even asks what's wrong. People started telling her to hush, to mind her own work, to stop speaking like that. But Clara had never been good at stopping. One day, she wasn't at the shop. The teapot stayed cold, the sugar bowl unfilled. At first, they thought she was ill. Then, that she'd left town. But no one saw her leave. No packed bag, no note, no fight. Just empty silence where her chatter used to be. The owner of the shop waited 3 days, then cleaned out her things. She didn't have much. A scarf, a book of poems, and a scrap of paper folded and hidden in the drawer under the till. On it, barely legible. He watches me now. I think he heard me whisper. No report was filed. There was no law against vanishing. No law against fear. No law against talking too much until you disappeared. The police called it a young woman's impulse. The neighborhood called it a shame. And Cream, he didn't call it anything at all. But someone remembered. The boy who swept the shop. He said the night before she vanished, he heard her practicing something, over and over quietly. Alone. Not all medicine heals. Not all hands are helping. And not all questions are safe. She's not buried. Not listed. No one knows where she went. But some say, when the wind hits just right, and the teacups clink without hands, you can still hear her voice not speaking. Now, just breathing. Waiting. Listening to who dares whisper next. Her name was Edith. She wasn't bold. She wasn't sickly. She was just unsure. The kind of girl who always looked twice before crossing a quiet street. She didn't like doctors, didn't trust medicines. But her stomach had been cramping for days. And the whispers said he knows how to help quick, cheap, quiet. So she went. But she brought her sister, just in case. The sister's name was Mabel. She was louder, sharper, didn't believe in anything she hadn't read herself. When they stepped into the clinic, Cream raised one eyebrow, just slightly, the way a man does when the plan shifts and he doesn't like it. Only the patient. Please, he said. Polite, firm, smiling without warmth. Mabel didn't move. I promised our mum, she said flatly, won't touch anything. Just stay quiet. He hesitated, then gestured Edith in. Mabel followed. The room smelled clean, but not fresh. More like something that had been scrubbed one too many times. Cream asked questions, listened, then opened the drawer. Mabel noticed. She said nothing, but she stood up, walked closer, not threatening just there. Cream's hand paused over the dropper. He looked at her. Really looked, then closed the drawer. I think mild tea and rest will help, he said, almost sweetly. Mabel didn't smile back. She thanked him, took her sister's hand, and walked them out. On the way home, Edith whispered, you think he was going to? I think, Mabel said. He changed his mind, and that was all. Years later, when the stories came out, the poisons, the patterns, the bottle after bottle, Edith stayed very quiet. But Mabel didn't. She wrote a letter, not to accuse, not to claim, just to record. He only changed his course because I stayed. Whatever was in that drawer wasn't meant to help her. Some say Mabel saved her sister's life. Some say she frightened a killer for a moment. Some say it was luck. But Edith never went to a clinic again. Not alone. Not ever. Sometimes safety doesn't arrive like a miracle. It doesn't shine. It doesn't scream. It just stands in the room, refuses to leave, and reminds danger that it's being watched. The boarding house was old. 4 floors, 12 rooms, 1 shared kitchen, and locks that clicked louder than they should. Room 6 belonged to a girl named Bess. No last name, just Bess. She paid on time, kept to herself, and always bolted the door at night. One morning, the landlady knocked. Breakfast hour had passed. No sounds from inside. No creak of floorboards, no cough, no kettle. Oh. She knocked again, then again. Still nothing. She fetched the spare key, but the bolt was drawn from the inside. The window was shut. No fire escape, no balcony. Only one door, only one way in, and it was still locked. A boy from the butcher's was sent up a ladder, peered through the pane. He turned pale, climbed back down without speaking, just nodded once. The constable broke the door. Bess was on the floor, eyes open, mouth half-parted, arms limp beside a glass of water. On the table, a note. Brief, felt unwell, took the drops, lying down now. And beside the note, a bottle, labeled Dr. T. N. Cream, 2 drops, every 4 hours. No one else had come in. No signs of struggle. No missing items. Only her, only the bottle, and a locked door. The report was brief. No foul play suspected. Likely overdose, body removed, room cleaned, but the constable paused. Just once. He touched the bolt, noticed it was smooth, oiled, newer than the other locks. Someone had cared about that bolt. Someone had made sure it worked perfectly. There was one question left unasked. Why would a girl lock herself in after taking something meant to make her sleep? No one pursued it. The bottle was logged, filed away, stored, forgotten. But someone, later, found the landlady's journal. She had scrawled something strange in the margins of her ledger that night. He asked for a room once, said he liked how quiet it stayed. I said no. Now I wonder if he ever left. A locked door brings comfort, unless the danger was already inside. Sometimes, you don't need to break in. You just need to wait for someone to follow instructions. Her name was Nell. No one had seen her in 3 weeks. She was small, quick-footed, and always wore the same navy shawl even in summer. She wasn't the kind of girl people noticed missing, but someone did. The woman who sold her bread. The boy who brought coal to her basement flat. And the neighbor who heard her scream. Just once. And then never again. They assumed she'd gone, moved out, moved on. It happened. Girls like Nell didn't always say goodbye. But one Tuesday morning, she was back. Standing in front of her door, shawl gone, shoes wrong, eyes unfocused, like someone had wound her too tight and then let go. The neighbor gasped, ran to her. Nell. She blinked, didn't answer, just tilted her head like the name didn't fit. He led her inside. She sat down slowly and whispered, "Is it Tuesday? I thought it was still, before." They asked where she had been. She couldn't say. "There was a room," she murmured. "There was a smell, like almonds, but wrong." She said there were hands, not cruel, not kind, just hands doing things she couldn't see. She remembered a voice, a low, flat one, repeating numbers, 2 drops, 4 hours, rest. They brought a doctor, not Cream, someone else. He examined her, said she was lucid, but frayed, like a dress left in the rain too long. Still whole, but barely. She stayed silent for days. Then, one evening, she spoke, soft, like remembering a lullaby. There was a shelf with bottles. I think they had names. I think mine was one of them. But I didn't take it. I think I refused. I said I was thirsty, not sick. And then, someone turned off the light. No missing persons report had ever been filed. No one had searched. There was no proof she'd been gone. No injuries, no poison in her blood. Just a girl who came back and didn't remember leaving. Later, she was seen burning something in the fireplace. Pages from a book. A shawl that wasn't hers. And a piece of paper folded, then torn with the letters T, N, still visible in the corner. She never spoke of it again. There are ways to survive without escaping. Ways to return without ever being free. Nell stayed in that flat until the walls crumbled. She never moved again. She only whispered to herself. Some nights, "Don't drink it. Just wait. Just wait and stay awake." His name was Henry, not Mr., not Constable, just Henry. He worked in a print shop, handled letters, envelopes, ink, secrets, and sometimes he read more than he was supposed to, especially when the pages came in without return addresses, typed in the same neat rhythm, using the same worn ribbon. That's how he found it. A letter addressed to Scotland Yard, folded with care, no signature, full of details no one should know. He recognized the format. He'd seen it before. He remembered the faint smell of iodine on the paper, and he remembered who brought it in. A man with gloves. Too clean, too calm. Dr. T. N. Cream. Henry waited, watched the news, heard of another girl, then another. And the moment he was certain, he wrote his own letter. But this one didn't go to the police. It went straight to the doctor. "I know your typewriter. I know the letters you send. If you don't want them traced, you'll meet me. Thursday, 8 p.m. The alley behind the printers." He thought he was being clever. Thought power came from knowing something first. Thought fear could be sold. But Cream didn't respond. Not with money, not with threats. He showed up, right on time, gloves on, smile slight, and said only one sentence. "You're not the first to try." Henry swallowed, held out the note, waited. But Cream didn't even look at it, just asked, "Do you drink?" Henry blinked, nodded. "Sometimes." Cream handed him a small vial. "No charge," he said, "for sleep, for your nerves." Then he walked away. Henry never drank it, but he did start shaking. And 3 days later, he left town. No note, no trace, only a half-packed bag in his room and a broken bottle in the bin, still sealed, still full, but cracked clean across the neck, like someone had changed their mind mid-pour. Years later, a letter was found in the back of a drawer at the print shop, unsent, unfolded. He smiled at me. That was all. And I realized I wasn't threatening a man. I was waking something up. Blackmail only works when the thing you're threatening has something to lose. Cream didn't lose. He just waited and smiled. Her name was Elsie. She worked evenings folding linens at a boarding hospital. Quiet hands, soft eyes. Never late, never loud, never. One night, she came home with a cramp behind her ribs. Not pain. Exactly just pressure. She told her flatmate she might visit a doctor. Someone cheap, someone close. The name came up. Dr. Cream. She made an appointment. Walked down the narrow streets, past the tea shop, stepped through the faded green door just before dusk. The girl behind her never saw her come back out. She waited, then went home. Assumed she'd stayed for longer care. But that night, Elsie was found slumped against her own bed, shoes still on, bag still closed, and in her hand, a paper prescription. Folded, unread, unfilled. She had never taken a drop, never opened a bottle, never swallowed a thing, but she was dead. The coroner scratched his head. No visible injury, no marks, no signs of struggle. A faint smell, sweet, wrong. Something like almonds, but not from the kitchen, not from anything she owned. The prescription was real. Signed T, N, Cream, simple dose, common formula, no abnormalities, except her skin. Around her lips, a pale burn. At her fingertips, a fine powder. And inside her bag, a napkin. Folded around a toffee, the toffee had melted, softened, and absorbed something invisible, deadly. The investigator assumed a misstep. Maybe she'd touched the wrong cloth. Maybe something spilled at work. Maybe. But the napkin was stamped. A faint watermark from the clinic. And the girl remembered Elsie had said the doctor handed her a sweet while waiting on the paperwork. She never bit it, just held it. Long enough. There are poisons that need the bloodstream. Some need the lungs. Some just the skin. Cream knew them all. More than any pharmacist. More than most chemists. He understood patience. He understood silence. He understood that sometimes you don't need them to swallow. You just need them to touch. Elsie never took the first dose. She died before the cure could pretend to begin. And that, in the end, was the proof no one knew how to keep. Her name was Lily May, not just Lily. She always insisted on both names, as if separating them would split her in two. One half soft, one half brave. She worked at a seamstress's shop, took in odd jobs, kept a journal, not a diary of feelings, but records, of hours, of faces, of days that blurred too easily. She wasn't ill, just tired. The kind of tired that crawls into the bones. She wrote, not sick, but not well. Like something slow is curling inside me. Her friend said, you should see a doctor. Lily May nodded. Didn't say which one, but she circled an ad in the newspaper. A name, a promise of discretion. Dr. T.N. Cream. The day before the appointment, she wrote something strange in the back of her journal. Not a poem. Not a plan. Just this. If I don't come back, I liked lemon tea. I hated sewing sleeves. And I loved the color of dusk. She folded the page, tucked it under her pillow, put on her cleanest shoes, and left. She never came home. Her roommate waited, searched, asked. But no one remembered seeing Lily May at the clinic. No signature, no entry, no denial. She had vanished between the front step and the night. Weeks passed. Her things were boxed. Her journal found, and the folded note, that quiet obituary, was read by hands that trembled. Some say she had a premonition. Others say she had heard stories. But the most frightening thing is this. She didn't try to escape. She just prepared, as if she knew that not all deaths come with violence. Some come with polite smiles, well-written scripts, and locked doors that never creak. Her journal now sits in an archive, unclaimed, untouched. But that page, creases deep, ink slightly smudged, still reads the same. I liked lemon tea. I hated sewing sleeves. I loved the color of dusk. And underneath, in handwriting, not hers, a check mark, drawn in red. No one knows who wrote it, or when. It was a Thursday. Mild rain, gray light through the market tents. People say London has a way of making even smiles look tired. But not that day. Not that smile, because it wasn't tired. It wasn't kind. It wasn't even quite human. He was standing near the edge of the crowd, just outside a bakery, not waiting in line, not shopping, just there, watching. A street performer was juggling bottles, old glass, dusty, some cracked. The crowd laughed, clapped. Coins clinked in the tin. One bottle fell, shattered. Gasps. And from the far side, a sound. Brief. Sharp. Too clear for that soft, rainy morning. A laugh. Then a smile. Someone saw him. A girl selling flowers. She had seen him once before leaving a building that no longer stood. She remembered the coat, the gloves, and now the smile. It wasn't joy, she said. It wasn't even amusement. It was like something inside him approved. She stopped selling flowers that day. She said her fingers trembled too much. The baker said the man lingered for a while, didn't buy anything, didn't speak, just stared at the broken glass as if remembering something no one else could see. Then, without a word, He turned and vanished into the mist. Later, a constable mentioned the event in passing. Strange fellow. Watched the crowd, not the juggler. Didn't blink much. Smiled once, like he'd been waiting for the crash. People don't think much of a smile. They forget that it's muscle, that it can be rehearsed, that it can mean the opposite of comfort, that sometimes a smile isn't what happens after joy. It's what comes instead of guilt. That day, Cream didn't touch anyone. He didn't offer medicine. He didn't carry a bag. But something about the way he looked at that broken bottle made the air feel thinner, like the glass had spilled something invisible and wrong. It was the only time anyone saw him smile, truly smile, unhidden. And no one who saw it ever wanted to see it again. Her name was Rosie, 18, freckled cheeks, voice like a match just struck quick, bright, gone too soon. She had an appointment, small fever, sharp aches, nothing urgent. But someone told her, he's quick, he won't ask questions, and that sounded like kindness. So she came. 10 minutes late. The door was closed, not locked, but something about the handle felt off. She knocked once, twice. No answer. Inside, it was quiet. No footsteps, no shuffling papers, no cough, no voice, just stillness. She waited, looked through the narrow glass, saw nothing. A curtain drawn, a single lamp flickering, and something else, a shadow that moved without making sound. She knocked again, louder. This time, a voice. Come back tomorrow. Flat. Even. No anger, no explanation. Rosie blinked. She almost apologized, almost waited. But something in her legs told her to go. So she did. That night, another girl was found 2 streets down, barely breathing. No identification. A bottle in her pocket broken, but labeled. Same doctor, same dose, the time of death. Roughly 20 minutes after Rosie had knocked. The papers didn't mention Rosie. She wasn't sick enough, wasn't involved, wasn't dead. But years later, she told someone, a nurse, during her first pregnancy, her hands shaking over the form. I was supposed to be next. I think he only let her in because I was late. The nurse didn't write that down, but she never forgot it. Rosie lived a long life, married, 3 children, but every time she passed a closed door, she waited half a second longer, just in case. Some stories end before they begin. Some deaths are missed by minutes. And sometimes, salvation doesn't come with angels or epiphanies or thunder. It comes as a man who doesn't open the door when you knock. Her name was Eleanor. She had been married once, to a man who coughed through the winters and laughed too hard at his own stories. His name was Charles, and he died quietly, in a room with closed shutters, hands folded over his stomach, eyes wide, as if still mid-question. They said it was natural. The lungs. Too many years in the dye house. Too many nights without enough coal. Eleanor believed them. She had no reason not to, until the dream. It came a year later. She was sitting by a river, the kind that doesn't exist. Too smooth, too quiet, too wide. On the opposite bank, a figure stood. She couldn't see his face, but he wore gloves, and in his hand, a small glass dropper. He held it up, tilted it once, and a single drop fell into the river. The water turned gray around it. She woke up sweating, the smell of something sweet and chemical still clinging to her skin. She thought nothing of it at first, just grief, just memory, just night playing tricks. But weeks later, at the grocer's, she overheard a name, a whisper, a warning. A doctor, something about bottles and women and quiet deaths. Cream. She didn't recognize the name. But in the paper that week, there was a sketch. A courtroom drawing, man in a chair, hands folded, face passive. And on the table beside him, an object. Small, flesh, glass, tapered. A dropper. Eleanor dropped the paper, fainted. When she came to, she couldn't explain. But later, alone, she found Charles's things. At the bottom of a box, a folded paper, unopened prescription, written in a familiar, perfect hand. T.N. Cream. She had never known he'd gone to a doctor. He hadn't mentioned it. He wasn't the type to complain, but the bottle was gone, and the man who gave it had been caught for something else. Something with a pattern that smelled like almonds. Eleanor kept the paper. She didn't tell the court. She didn't speak to the police. There was no proof, only the dream. Only the shape of that dropper. Only the chill that hadn't left since. She whispered once to a neighbor, "Sometimes they don't need to kill you directly. They just let something slide into your cup and call it mercy." And maybe Charles hadn't meant to die. Maybe he just wanted the coughing to stop. And maybe Cream had smiled, just once, while reaching for the dropper. His name was Thomas, just 11. Thin wrists, quiet steps, and a job that paid 3 pennies a week. Deliver letters. Don't ask questions. Don't look inside. He had a leather pouch, buckled shut, slung across one shoulder, worn smooth from weather and worry. He liked the routes near the river, liked the bridges, the way the fog curled like breath made solid. But on Mondays, he was assigned to Lambeth, to the small clinic near the grocer's. He hated Lambeth. Too many doors that opened too slowly. Too many eyes watching from curtains. That Monday was the last. He had one envelope. No name, just urgent. Hand to doctor. He knocked. The door opened too fast. A man with gloves took the letter without a word, then paused and smiled. "Curious boy," he said. "Would you like to come in, warm your hands?" Thomas didn't answer, just stared. Behind the man, he saw the room. Not all of it, just enough. A table, and on it, not bottles, not books. Something wrapped, something still moving. Something that made no sound, but filled the silence completely. Thomas blinked, then stepped back, then ran. He didn't deliver the rest of the route. Didn't collect his coin. Didn't speak the next day, or the next. His mother thought he had a cold, then thought he was pretending, then cried quietly while brushing his hair, hoping her silence might match his. He never explained, but he never went near that street again. Years later, after Cream's arrest, a photograph appeared in the paper. Thomas pointed at it, just once, then picked up a pencil and snapped it in half. No one asked what he'd seen. They were afraid he might try to tell them. Yeah. Some kinds of fear don't scream. They simply sit, folded behind the ribs, pressing gently every time you breathe. And sometimes they begin with a knock, an open door, and a smile that doesn't fit the face it's wearing. The name was Clara Hayes. Neat handwriting, always the same spelling, always the same flourish at the C. It appeared 6 times in 6 separate ledgers, all belonging to Dr. Cream. Date spaced just far enough apart to seem routine. A patient, recurring, familiar, but there was no Clara Hayes. Not in census records, not in boarding registries, not in baptismal books or burial logs. No rent paid under that name. No job listing. No known relatives. Just a name, written down again and again and again. When asked, Cream blinked, then smiled. No memory of her. Must be a clerical habit. Perhaps I reused a placeholder. The inspector raised an eyebrow. A placeholder. I often test my pen first. You understand, before real names go in. He said it so calmly, like it was nothing. Like the name itself didn't carry weight. But something was strange. Each time Clara Hayes was written, there were matching entries: dose given, symptoms mild, patient advised rest. All precise, all detailed. No one tests a pen with a paragraph. One nurse remembered something, a voice, soft, asking about Clara. Has she come today? She was coughing last time. She likes the mint tonic, doesn't she? But the nurse never saw a patient by that name. Not once. And when she mentioned it to Cream, he replied, "You probably missed her. She's quiet. Slips in and out." Later, When the ledgers were examined, a pattern emerged. Every time the name appeared, a death followed. Not in the clinic, not even nearby, but within 2 blocks, within 24 hours. Every time, they wondered, was Clara Hayes a real person? A ghost from his past, a symbol, a warning, a trophy, or just a lie he wrote so often he started to believe it? No one knows. But in the final ledger, on the last page, dated a week before Cream's arrest, there it was again. Clara Hayes, 10 a.m. Symptoms none. Prescription observed only. Result unknown. There are names that disappear. And there are names that repeat, like a drum in a room full of silence. Clara Hayes never spoke, but she was written. And sometimes, that's more haunting than memory. Her name was Ada, mid-30s, eyes like slate under overcast light. She had lived long enough to stop expecting kindness, but not long enough to stop hoping it might still arrive quietly, disguised. The fever came fast, sharp in the bones, heavy in the joints. It wasn't deadly, but it made everything feel a little further away. A neighbor told her about a doctor. Said he didn't ask questions. Didn't charge much. Worked quietly, quickly. That last part sounded like mercy. She went the next morning, waited in the hall, watched a girl come out with a smile too flat and a gait too slow. Then it was her turn. Cream barely looked at her, asked a few things, felt her pulse, then turned to his drawer. The same drawer. He didn't hand her a bottle, just a slip of paper, folded, clean. "Get it filled," he said. "You'll feel better by morning." She thanked him, tucked the paper into her coat, left. But on the walk home, something itched. Not her skin, not the fever, a weight. Light as the paper was, it felt wrong. She didn't open it, didn't read it, just stood in the alley behind her building, pulled a match, and lit the edge. Watched it curl, fold in on itself, ash drifting into gray sky. Later that night, the fever broke, naturally, sweat and sleep and the sound of wind. And she never quite knew why she burned it. She told her sister once, months later, it was just a feeling, like if I read it, I'd owe something, or lose something. Her sister asked, "What do you mean?" Ada said, "I don't know. But I've never wanted to be cured by someone who didn't look me in the eyes." The pharmacist down the street said a man came in that same day asking if a woman had brought in a script. "Brown coat, pale cheeks," he asked. She hadn't, and he left without waiting. No one ever proved that Cream wrote anything strange that day. No poison, no bottle, no crime. Just a slip of paper no longer in the world. And a woman who trusted the weight in her coat more than the promise on the page. Some medicines are never swallowed. Some warnings never shouted. Some lives saved by fire that burned quietly before the danger had a name. Her name was Frances. She was not nervous, not shy, not easily fooled. She had grown up among men who talked too loud, and women who survived by hearing what wasn't said. She came into Dr. Cream's office with a sore throat, mild fever, a headache that pulsed behind her left eye. Nothing deadly, nothing dramatic, no. But she wanted relief. Quick, quiet, cheap. She sat, waited, watched. And Cream did what he always did. He listened, he nodded, he wrote, then he reached for the drawer. That's when she asked, softly, casually, "Would you take it yourself?" Just 6 words, barely a breath, but they hung in the air like smoke that wouldn't rise. Cream paused, not longer, but long enough. His hand hovered, his eyes flicked sideways. Then he smiled, too slow, too tight. "Of course," he said. "I only prescribe what I'd trust." But the bottle stayed in the drawer 2 seconds longer than usual. And when he handed it to her, his hand trembled, just slightly, as if the question had reached somewhere he didn't keep locked quite tight enough. Frances took the bottle, held it, looked at it, then placed it on their table. "Nah, sir. I changed my mind," she said. "Think I'll try lemon and sleep instead." She smiled, almost kindly, and left. She didn't tell anyone for a long time. didn't think it mattered. But when the story started, when names resurfaced, when women disappeared, she remembered that pause and wondered how many never thought to ask, how many believed that answer. She told a reporter years later, "I didn't think I'd catch him in a lie. I just wanted to see if he flinched." And he did. There are questions that expose, not because of what's said after, but because of the breath it takes to think of a lie that won't leave a trace. It was late October. The rain had softened. The sky pressed low. Dr. Cream sat at his desk. Everything in its place. The drawer, the droppers, the ledgers lined with names that no longer answered to anything. Outside, a constable lingered across the street. Not watching. Not yet. But learning. Inside, the room was warm. A small fire, a cup of tea untouched, and a slip of paper, half filled, blank at the bottom. Cream dipped his pen, wrote slowly, deliberately. Just a name? No instructions? No dose. Thomas Neill Cream, that was all. No RX, no patient, no illness. Just his own name on a page meant for others. No one knows why he wrote it. Some say it was habit. Some say it was confession. But when they searched the office after his arrest, they found it folded, tucked beneath a ledger, still damp at the corners. A final prescription. Signed, but not sent. Silent, but heavier than poison. They say when he was taken in, he said nothing. Didn't resist, didn't flinch. Just looked down at his gloves like they were part of someone else's body. And when they asked him, at last, if he had anything to say, he answered, "You've read the names. Isn't that enough?" No bottle was found that day. No body. No patient. Just that paper, that name, that silence. Some killers leave trails. Some leave clues. Cream left a record. In ledgers, in bottles, in breathless rooms. And in the end, he wrote himself down as just another line. Another name meant to disappear between the folds. The building was condemned. Bricks flaking, windows boarded. A sign half hanging to be cleared by order. They were tearing it down for shops. Something brighter, something cleaner. No one remembered the clinic had once been there. No plaque, no protest, just dust and the hum of machines. But on the third day of demolition, they found a door, not at ground level, lower, behind a wall that wasn't meant to be a wall. It had been bricked over, carefully, precisely, with mortar too clean for the rest of the building. The foreman almost ignored it, almost kept going. But something in the air behind it felt trapped, so they broke it open. A staircase, narrow, steep, unlit. It led down into a space that didn't belong to any blueprint. No records, no drawings, not even in city plans from before the war. And yet there it was. The basement was cold. Not from the air, but from the silence. Like it had been holding its breath for decades. There were shelves, wooden, sagging, lined with small glass bottles. Some empty, some sealed. No labels, just dust. And something else. A chair, facing the far wall. And a table, still standing. On it a single page. Folded, blank. Until the light caught it just right, and they saw the impression. Words pressed in without ink. A single phrase. "I test here first." The workers didn't touch the bottles. Not at first. Then not at all. Someone reported it. The site was cordoned off. But by the time inspectors arrived, the chair was gone. No sign of who moved it. No record of entry. Just a stain where the legs had stood. Rumors spread. Of course they did. Some said it was his practice room. Some said it was where he tested new mixtures. Some said it wasn't his at all, that someone else kept it for him. But no one said it aloud for long, because everyone agreed on one thing: that basement was never on any map. And yet, somehow, everyone felt they had passed over it once without knowing. Sometimes, evil doesn't hide. It just exists where no one thinks to look. Underfoot, under paper, under time, waiting for someone to knock on a door they didn't know was ever there. It was just a form. A routine form. folded between patient charts at a hospital slated for archive. The ink was fading, edges soft from time. A prescription slip. Nothing unusual until someone tried to file it. The date didn't match the ledger. The medicine listed didn't exist. And the signature, it stopped the clerk's hand mid-stamp. It wasn't slanted, not rushed, no loops or flourishes, just 5 letters. Firm, even, Cream. They compared it against every known record. His old prescriptions, his legal papers, even the confession note. And the experts agreed it wasn't a match. Not his, not a forgery, not anyone's. No one could say who wrote it, but they all said the same thing. It felt like his, not the shape, not the pressure, the presence. The paper was taken for analysis, no fingerprints, no watermark, just that name, and a faint stain near the edge. Something chemical, undetectable, but bitter to the touch. The patient listed on the form, no longer traceable. No known birth, no known death. Just a first name, just Marie. No room number, no attending nurse. Just one note in the margin, did not return for follow-up. Some said it was a prank. Some said it was misfiled from another case. But one archivist said something else. Quietly, almost too quiet. Sometimes the hand writes, even when the man is gone. They stored the slip in a sealed envelope, marked it unverified origin, filed it deep, top shelf, under boxes no one ever touches. But twice since then, someone's reported it missing, only to find it back again days later on their own desk. Face up, unopened, waiting. There are names that follow themselves, names that return in shapes no one remembers writing. And sometimes, the most terrifying thing on a page is not what it says, but who it refuses to stop being. Her name was Anna, sharp-eyed, soft-spoken, the kind of woman who always tucked her gloves into her coat sleeves so they wouldn't blow away. She was coughing, a deep, dragging kind of cough that pulled at her ribs and left her breathless between words. Someone told her, "See Cream? He'll give you something strong. He doesn't waste time with syrup." She didn't want syrup. She wanted silence in her chest. So she went. The office was empty that morning. Too quiet. Even for London, Cream saw her without asking her name. Didn't smile, didn't flinch. He listened, tapped her chest, nodded once. "This will help," he said, and handed her a small bottle. No instruction, no warning, no price. She took it home, 2 drops, then sleep. And by morning, she felt better. Not dizzy, not numb, not dead, just better. The cough eased. Her limbs stopped aching. Her eyes stopped burning. She returned the next week to thank him, but the clinic was closed. Door locked, window dark, and 3 days later, he was arrested. She read the charges, the victims, the patterns, the poisons. She found her own bottle, still half full, and froze. She brought it to a chemist, asked carefully what was in it. The chemist tasted a drop, tested another, mint, licorice, opium, in traces but nothing fatal. Just a basic compound, old-fashioned, even safe. So why? Why her? Why this bottle? No one knew. Maybe he was distracted. Maybe he was tired. Maybe he forgot. Maybe, just once, he meant to heal. Anna never finished the bottle. She kept it, sealed it, wrapped it in linen, stored it in a box behind the bookshelf. She said, "It reminds me that even monsters have moments. And sometimes, that's the scariest part. Some bottles kill, some bottles cure, and some do both, depending on what the hand intends at that exact second." And Cream's hands had never been predictable, not even to him. Her name was May, small, sharp, with a voice that always sounded like it was about to say something important. She worked in a dressmaker's cellar, counting pins, threading needles, breathing dust and damp every day. One Tuesday, she woke up with a fever that curled behind her eyes. Not bad enough to faint, but enough to make the world tilt. She made an appointment with Dr. Cream. 10:15 a.m. She wrote it down. She told no one, except her neighbor, an old woman named Elsie, who remembered things no one asked her to. That morning, May left early, wore her cleanest boots, tied a ribbon in her hair for the first time in weeks. Before she walked out, she took a piece of brown paper from under the bread tin and wrote 8 words. If I don't come back, check this. She folded it, slipped it beneath her teacup, left the door unlocked. Then she left. Longcha. She never arrived at the clinic, not officially. Her name wasn't logged. The appointment slot was left blank. But Elsie waited. Past noon, past supper, then entered the flat. Found the paper, and read it? She went to the clinic, banged on the door, no answer. Went again the next day, still nothing. A week later, Dr. Cream was arrested. No one found May. No one confirmed if she even stepped through the door. But a week after the arrest, a note was found wedged between 2 books in a back storeroom of the dress shop. It wasn't addressed, wasn't signed. Just said, he didn't expect me to know my own name. He didn't expect me to leave when I did. He didn't expect me to look him in the eye. Then, at the bottom, I left early. No one knows what that means. If she got away, if she never went, if she went and walked back out, but no one ever saw her again. Sometimes warnings aren't for others, they're for ourselves. A note, a name, a message written not in fear, but in preparation. And May, with her small voice, might have whispered one last sentence before the door ever opened. I think I already know what happens next. Her name was Jean, a quiet girl, worked at the laundry by the tracks, walked home the same way every night. Tired, but steady. She'd been ill for days. Nothing dramatic, just worn down in the way women are when no one asks if they're okay. She sent a friend, Margaret, to the clinic with a note, explaining symptoms, requesting a prescription. Margaret brought the message herself. Dr. Cream read it, nodded, said it would be ready by evening. Jean never got it. She died that afternoon, collapsed on the steps. Heart, they said, or lungs, or maybe both. The next morning, a package arrived, wrapped in brown paper, tied with twine. No return address, just her name, written in precise, looping script. Inside a small bottle and a slip of paper, 2 drops, every 4 hours. Margaret froze, checked the time, checked the date, checked the death certificate. Jean had died 6 hours before the bottle was sent, and yet the seal was still warm, like it had been corked just minutes earlier. She brought it to the police. They logged it, filed it, didn't test it. Too many other cases, too many other names. It was just another bottle, except this one had no reason to exist. No one should have filled that request. No one should have written that label. No one should have cared after death had already come. When Cream was arrested, Margaret mentioned the bottle. An officer remembered the entry. They searched the label, matched the ink. It was his. So the question stood, why send medicine to a dead girl, a delay, a mistake, or something else? Something that said I still wanted her name on my list. I already prepared it. I wasn't finished yet. Some poisons work in the body, others work in the air, in the waiting, in the knowledge that death had a schedule and hated being interrupted. And Jean, gentle, tired Jean, was the only one who missed her own appointment by dying too soon. Her name was Nora, a nurse, efficient, careful, the kind of woman who knew how to pack a case in silence and how to carry grief without letting it spill. She worked 3 shifts a week near Lambeth, filed forms, counted bottles, cleaned rooms where no one wanted to linger. One night, in the rush of end-of-day fatigue, she grabbed the wrong ledger. It looked like hers, same binding, same wear at the corners. She didn't notice until she got home. Late, hungry, heavy-limbed. She opened it, expecting patient notes, bed charts, dosage logs. But the first page just said, I record only what matters. And nothing after that looked like medicine. The handwriting was familiar, too familiar, clean, precise, impersonal. Dates, yes, but no ailments, just names. Short descriptions. Clara H. Curious, nervous hands. Ellen smiled once, then faded. No name, wore blue, coughed. Took all. No diagnosis, no dosage, no follow-up, just reactions, like someone writing about objects. Experiments, not people. Some names had small symbols beside them. A dot, a check, a tiny X. No legend, no explanation. And near the end, she asked about my hands. She saw too much. I smiled anyway. Nora closed the book, couldn't sleep. Kept hearing footsteps in her hallway that didn't echo right. The next morning, she returned it, said nothing. Left it where it had been. 2 weeks later, Cream was arrested. She never told anyone about the ledger. But at his trial, she sat in the back row, hands clasped, eyes fixed, and when his eyes met hers, he tilted his head ever so slightly, as if to say, "So, you read it. Some truths don't shout. They murmur, in ink, in margins, in notebooks that weren't meant to leave the room. And sometimes, you don't uncover the monster. You just hold what it wrote after everyone else had stopped looking." Her name was Helen. She was a court clerk, punctual, precise, invisible in the way useful people often are. She took notes without looking up, typed faster than most men in the room could speak, and forgot most names as soon as they passed through her fingers, until one didn't. The trial was already halfway through. Dr. Thomas Neill Cream sat in the dock, unmoved, unapologetic. Helen had been there every day, recording dates, testimonies, cross-examinations. She didn't flinch at poison, didn't blink at cause of death. But then a witness mentioned a name, a short girl, dark hair, worked in a laundry near Southwark. Her name was Evelyn, the man said. Evelyn Marsh. Helen's fingers froze. Evelyn, her sister, gone for 6 years, left without goodbye, fell out of memory like a photo tucked too deep in a drawer. They'd said she ran, left with a sailor, maybe went north, maybe just tired of being poor. Helen believed it, wanted to. But now the name had returned, on a list of the dead. A real name, in real ink, and Helen was the one typing it. She looked at Cream. He wasn't watching her. He never looked at the clerk. But suddenly, he did. Just once. Just long enough. His face didn't change. But something behind his eyes flickered. Recognition or anticipation. She looked down. That night, she opened the old trunk, pulled out Evelyn's last note. "I'll be back by Sunday. Don't wait up." But she never returned. And now, her name was evidence. Not a rumor, not a story. Proof. Helen didn't cry. She typed the next day, and the next. But when they read the charges aloud again, she added one more name to the margin of her copy. Evelyn Southwark. Gone before Sunday. Some people find justice in the courtroom. Others find ghosts. And some find both in the same name, spoken at the wrong moment by a stranger who never should have known it. After the trial, the clinic stayed empty. The curtains never moved. The windows collected dust. And the sign above the door, long faded, was finally pulled down by a boy who didn't know what it meant. They said justice had been done. That Cream had paid. That poison had a name. And that name had been hanged. But in Lambeth, the air still felt different. Heavier. Like the walls remembered more than they were willing to tell. Neighbors swore they heard things. A door creaking open even when it had been boarded shut. Footsteps on tile that hadn't seen shoes in years. A scent. Faint. Sweet. Like something spilled and wiped away too quickly. A girl walked past, once the daughter of a woman who used to clean for Cream. She paused, stared, and said, "He's not inside." But he didn't leave either. The new owner tried to turn it into a bakery. Lasted a month. Said the basement was wrong. Wouldn't elaborate. Just stopped showing up. After that, No one rented it again. Years passed. Buildings changed. Streets renamed. But still, someone always stepped a little faster near that door. Someone always looked once more over their shoulder. And someone always said, "That's where the doctor used to be. The one with the quiet hands. The one who gave death a soft voice." The poison was gone. The bottles were sealed. The name was buried. But silence that stayed. Not loud, not screaming, just present, persistent. Like a breath held in for far too long. Waiting. Some evils don't echo. They settle, like dust, like fog, like memory. And some rooms remain empty, not because no one wants them, but because they still belong to someone who never really left. Her name was Ellen. She was kind. Not in a way that asked for attention, but in the way she said thank you, even when no one held the door. She worked in a factory that dyed cotton. Her fingernails were always faintly blue, and her hair smelled like steam. She didn't complain, not when the hours ran long, not when her legs ached, not when the cough started. It was a small cough, tight, dry, annoying more than alarming. Still, someone told her, "You should see a doctor," and she had nodded. Not because she was worried, but because she didn't want to worry anyone else. The clinic was quiet that day. She liked the smell, something sharp, like soap and paper. She thought it smells clean in here, like someone cares. Cream was gentle, professional, said little, listened a lot. He asked where the pain was. She pointed. He nodded. Then he handed her a bottle. Amber glass, cool in her palm. 2 drops, every 4 hours. She smiled, took it like a student handed a good grade, said, "Thank you for seeing me. I know you're busy." That was the last time anyone saw her upright. She was found 2 days later, in bed, breath shallow, bottle empty. The landlady called it flu. The doctor didn't respond to letters. The city marked her death as undetermined. No family, no funeral, just a burial with a nameplate that read only E. Turner aged, about 25. But she left a letter. Not to him, not to anyone, really. A folded page in the pocket of her coat. It said, "If I don't wake up, tell the doctor I'm sorry. I think I used too much." He was very kind. Ellen never knew she'd been poisoned. Never knew others had taken the same drops. Never knew the man who smiled at her was already writing her name before she even sat down. Some people fight, some run, some scream. Ellen just apologized. Tight. She didn't think evil could come with a steady hand and a soft tone. And even as her body slowed, even as her lungs begged for air, she whispered, "I'm sorry. I didn't mean to waste your time." Yasha. Sometimes, the saddest deaths are the ones that ask for forgiveness from the man who caused them. Her name was Miriam. She worked in a laundry on Water Street. Didn't talk much. Didn't cry in public. And didn't forget things, not even the things she wanted to. Ellen was her younger sister, 2 years apart. Laughed at different jokes, but always shared gloves in winter. When Ellen died, they told Miriam it was her lungs. Maybe infection, maybe exhaustion. The kind of death poor women were expected to have. Expected to accept. Miriam nodded. Didn't argue. Didn't scream. But she kept the bottle. She found it in Ellen's drawer. Wrapped in a scarf. Still cool. Still heavy. The label had faded, but she could still read the name. Dr. T.N. Cream. She hadn't heard it before. Not yet. But she folded the scarf back like it held a secret that needed to be quiet a little longer. Weeks passed, then months. Then the first rumor. A girl from Blackfriars. Gone. Same kind of bottle. Same prescription. Same. Nothing after. Then another. And another. And suddenly, that name was everywhere. Cream. Miriam never went to the police. She didn't trust men in uniforms. She trusted patterns. So, she wrote things down. In the margins of old newspapers. On bits of string tags from the laundry. She mapped it, not with pins, but with names. Dates. Faces people stopped mentioning. And Ellen sat at the center. Not because she was first, but because she was hers. One day, she visited the building, didn't go in, just stood across the street. Watched the windows, watched the door. She thought someone like him must think no one sees, but she did. She saw enough. She turned away, didn't speak of it, didn't write about it. Yeah. But when Cream was arrested, she didn't say she was surprised. She said, "Took them long enough." She never told anyone about the bottle. She buried it in the courtyard behind the laundry. 3 feet down, wrapped in 2 scarves. She marked the spot with a single button from Ellen's coat. It's still there, probably, because some things don't need to be proved to be real. Some sisters cry, some pray, some forget. Miriam remembered every name, every note, every cough. And one day, when a girl she barely knew started to feel faint, Miriam said, "Don't go to him. It's not the cure that kills you. It's who gives it to you." His name was Alfred. He ran a small chemist shop tucked between a tobacconist and a pawn shop. Modest business. Modest man. He liked things measured. Clean counters, clear labels, quiet days. One afternoon, a tall man came in. Polite, well-spoken, he placed a note on the counter. A prescription, folded with sharp creases. Alfred opened it. "Read the ingredients. Nothing too odd. Opium tincture, a touch of antimony, familiar to any trained chemist. But the proportions, they weren't wrong, just unkind. Strong, where they didn't need to be." He hesitated. "Hey, this is a rather heavy dose." The man didn't blink. "I adjust based on my patient's weight," said it plainly, clinically. Then smiled. Not big, not fake, just enough. Alfred filled it, measured each drop, wrote the label in careful script, placed the cork, tied the string, handed it over. Watched the man walk out, and then couldn't sleep that night, or the next, or for many nights after. A week later, he saw the same man's face in the paper. Dr. Cream linked to sudden death of young woman. The name on the bottle matched. Exactly. He found his record book, traced the prescription, his own handwriting. Ink still dark, no doubt. And all he could think was, that bottle had my hands on it. And she died with it beside her. He considered going to the police, but what could he say? "I filled a legal prescription, but my gut told me not to." Who would listen to a gut after the fact? So he did what most men do when their conscience grows too large. He boxed it, put the record book in a drawer, locked it, swallowed the key. Not literally, but close enough. And still, he didn't sleep. He tried. Warm milk, lavender under the pillow, reading old anatomy texts. Nothing helped. Because it wasn't fear that kept him awake. It was memory of how calm Cream had been, of how precisely that signature looped at the end, of how easy it was to play a part in something irreversible. Alfred never filled another of Cream's prescriptions, not because he refused, because no more came. And that, somehow, was worse. Sometimes the poison isn't in the bottle. It's in the silence that follows when the cork has been sealed and the door has closed, and the hands that helped, even once, never quite feel clean again. Her name was Jo, short for Josephine, but no one ever used the full name, not even her mother, not even the priest. She worked at a flower stall near the bridge, knew which lilies meant grief, which violets meant regret. Didn't speak much, didn't smile unless she meant it. One winter, her chest grew tight. The cold settled behind her ribs like it was renting a room. A woman told her, "Go to the quiet doctor. He sees people like us." She didn't know what like us meant, but she went. Dr. Cream didn't ask about her family. Didn't ask why she looked over her shoulder 3 times before stepping in. He just asked for symptoms, nodded, opened a drawer, handed her a bottle. 2 drops. You'll sleep well tonight. She thanked him. Held the bottle to her chest all the way home, like it might warm her better than tea. She never took it. Something in the weight. Something in the way the cork sat too perfectly. Something in how his eyes had watched her leave without blinking. She set it on the windowsill that night, stared at it, didn't sleep. The next morning, she walked across town to the church she hadn't entered in years. The chapel was empty, just one old man sweeping. He didn't look up. She knelt, not to pray, but to breathe. Then she rose, walked to the back wall, and behind the loose panel by the altar, she placed the bottle, wrapped in a scrap of linen. No note, no label, just placed it there, like an offering. She never told anyone, not even when the news came. Not even when they showed his face. She just whispered to herself, I gave it to God. If he wants it, he can keep it. If not, he can bury it. Years later, a renovation team found it. Dusty. Still sealed, still full. They threw it away. No one tested it. No one knew where it came from. No one asked why it had been there, except one worker who said the cork had felt strange warm. Just for a second. Some people survive not because they run, but because they don't swallow. Because something ancient tells them to take fear seriously. And sometimes, what you don't drink saves you, and what you hide even if no one ever finds it still counts as resistance. Her name was Dinah. She was 17. Worked 3 jobs before that one. 2 for grocers, 1 for a widow who threw spoons when she drank. The doctor paid better. Didn't shout. Didn't touch. Didn't look. She liked that. At first, her job was simple sweep. Empty bins. Wash teacups that were never stained. And dust the shelf where nothing ever moved. She wasn't allowed near the drawer. She wasn't allowed near the patients. But sometimes, she listened. Once, she found a glove. Black. Left hand. Lying under the table where the doctor always sat to write names she never saw twice. She meant to give it back. Really. But something about it, how warm it still was, how soft, how wrong. She couldn't. She slipped it into her coat pocket and said nothing. The next day, Cream asked, Did you move anything? She shook her head. He didn't push, but she never went back. No resignation, no goodbye. She just stopped showing up. That was enough. She kept the glove, not out of affection, not out of fear, but because she knew one day someone would ask, Were you really there? And she needed to have something that said yes, even if no one believed her. Guy shut. Even if no one asked. Years later, when his name filled the papers, she pulled the glove from its box. The stitching had held. The inside still smelled faintly of ash and something sweet. She held it once, then wrapped it again. Didn't burn it, didn't throw it away, just put it deeper in the drawer. Some people keep photos, letters, souvenirs. Dinah kept a glove because it wasn't that kind of memory you could tell. It was the kind you had to touch to remember how real it had been. His name was Lyle. He cleaned chimneys, not because he liked it, but because it paid in coin, not promises. He didn't talk much, not because he was rude, but because soot got in your throat if you talked too early in the day. He was called to the doctor's flat on a Monday. Small place, fireplace barely used. No smoke marks, no smell. He thought strange to need a sweep for a chimney that hasn't breathed. But work is work. He cleaned it. Quick job. Left with black hands and nothing to remember. Until Thursday. He was called back. Same address, same flat, same fireplace. Only this time there was ash. A lot of it. Still warm. Still shifting, like it hadn't decided to be still yet. And the smell not wood, not coal. Something sharper, bitter, faintly metallic, like paper and old flowers burned together in the same flame. He didn't ask questions. Not aloud. Misha. But as he swept, he found something. A sliver of glass, curved, thin, tinged brown at the base, and a loop of string burned halfway through. No one labels kindling. Cream didn't speak much, just paid. Exactly the same coins, exactly the same nod. Lyle left without counting. Didn't return the glass. Didn't mention the smell. But he never cleaned that chimney again. He told his brother, years later, I cleaned a crime that hadn't been named yet. You ever feel like that? Like the soot itself is trying to whisper? No report was filed. No questions asked. because chimney sweeps aren't supposed to notice what doesn't burn properly. But Lyle kept that shard of glass, wrapped it in a rag, put it in his toolbox, and every so often, when work was quiet, he'd unwrap it, just to remind himself that some fires don't warm, they erase. And that sometimes, a man calls you back not to clean what's there, but to remove what was. Her name was Lottie. 10, maybe 11. Small hands, always cold. She swept the floor of the back corridor for a few coins and a piece of bread. No one asked her name. She didn't expect them to. She didn't know how to read, but she could count. She could carry water without spilling it. And she knew when a room felt wrong. The doctor never looked at her. Not once. Just pointed. There, sweep again. Don't touch the desk. So, of course, one day she did. Not to steal, not to snoop, just to see. To see what made the room feel like it was waiting for someone to be scared. She opened the drawer, found the ledgers, notebooks, stacked neatly, each one wrapped with string tight enough to make her fingers ache. She took one, untied the knot. Pages full of words, lines and loops, columns. She couldn't read, but she could feel. The pages felt heavy, too heavy for paper, like the names were pressed in with something other than ink. She turned a few pages, stopped at one. There was a mark, not a drawing, not a word, a tiny red blot, not quite circular, not quite dry. She touched it. It flaked. She wiped her hand on her apron, didn't open another page. She tied the string back, put the book exactly where it had been, or close enough. She didn't take anything, except a ribbon she found between the pages, a pale blue one, frayed at the end. She tied it in her hair that day, just once, then burned it that night without telling herself why. Years later, she worked in a bakery, still couldn't read, but remembered every line of every ledger she'd ever seen. Not the words, but the weight of them, the shape of the paper, the feel of that red spot, the smell of the string. Like something that had been wrapped not to protect, but to trap. She told a girl once, "Books don't scare me." But that one did, because I couldn't read it, and it still knew my name. Her name was Violet. She laughed often, not out of joy, but out of disbelief. At prices, at men, at the way the world expected women to suffer quietly. She worked in a print shop. Inked fingers, fast mouth. A grin that made people uncomfortable because it came too fast and stayed too long. She'd been sick for a week. Nothing serious, just tired. Tired enough to want help, but not enough to trust anyone fully. Her friend dared her. Go to the doctor in Lambeth, the one who talks like a priest and gives out bottles like blessings. Violet rolled her eyes, but she went. The clinic was quiet, too clean, like someone had been scrubbing something invisible. Cream entered without sound, gestured to the chair. She sat. He asked questions, checked her pulse, listened to her breathe. Then he reached for the drawer. She watched his hand, slow, deliberate, and she laughed. Not loud, not rude, just a single burst. You always do that. Wait until the room feels like a funeral before handing out medicine. Cream froze, just slightly, then smiled, too tightly, too late. Most people don't joke during examinations. She leaned forward. Maybe that's why they don't leave with their whole self. Something changed. He didn't hand her the bottle. He set it on the table, waited, watched. She didn't touch it. Instead, she stood, straightened her coat, and said, "I think I'll take my chances with soup." She walked out. 2 days later, a different girl died. Same symptoms, same bottle. Violet read it in the paper, didn't laugh. She sat very still, for once, then lit a match, burned her coat's hem, just a little where it had brushed against the drawer. She never told anyone what happened. But years later, when asked how she avoided danger, she said, "I don't trust men who never blink when they lie." Some people survive because they run, some because they pray. Violet, she laughed, and in that single, short sound, broke a rhythm that wasn't meant to be broken. His name was Edward, not Eddie. Not Ted, just Edward. He delivered things, packages, vials, letters, tools. No questions. He liked jobs that ended with coin and no conversation. Worked fast. Kept his head down. Trusted weight more than people. The doctor was a regular client. Weekly pickups. Occasional drops. Always polite. Always exact. But one delivery was different. A wooden box. Small. No label, no seal. Just tied tight with brown string. Not heavy, but dense, like something inside it didn't want to be carried. Cream gave no instructions. Just said, "Deliver to the chemist on Windmill Street." Directly into his hands, not to a clerk. Edward nodded. Took the box. Noticed the way Cream's fingers lingered a second too long. Not in affection. In calculation, he walked with the box pressed against his chest. London cold. Streets damp. Halfway there, he stopped. Not because he was tired, but because something about the box. It buzzed, not sound, not heat, just a feeling. Like holding something that had once been alive and hadn't quite finished dying. He didn't open it, never even loosened the knot. But he did set it down on a stone wall near the river and stepped back. Waited. Nothing moved, nothing blinked. Still, he didn't want to touch it again. Eventually, he picked it up with his sleeve pulled over his hand. Didn't stop again. Delivered it as asked. The chemist looked surprised. "I didn't request anything." Edward shrugged. "He said you'd know." The chemist kept the box. Didn't open it in front of him. Edward walked away with lighter steps than usual. But for days after, he swore his hands smelled faintly sweet, like something spoiled inside something expensive. He never took work from Cream again. No explanation. Just refused. Not out of certainty, out of instinct. Years later, when Cream was arrested, the chemist tried to find the box, but it was gone. No entry in his inventory, no note. Just gone. Some packages aren't meant to be opened. And some men, like Edward, know that survival isn't about what you see. It's about knowing what to carry and what to set down before it asks you to keep a secret you can't afford to keep. Her name was Agnes. She mopped the hallway 3 times a week. Didn't speak unless spoken to. Didn't ask questions, but she had good ears. Not for gossip, for rhythm, for the way quiet could shift from peaceful to wrong. The doctor's door was thick, dark wood, polished, always closed. But it didn't need to be open for her to hear what it tried to hold in. Voices, low, strained. Furniture creaking once, then nothing. She never stayed long. But she always paused at that spot, 12 tiles from the front stairs. That was the place you could hear best. One day, she heard a girl's voice, soft, shaky, asking, "Will it hurt?" The doctor answered, "Not for long." And then liquid, a stopper pulled, a dropper drawn. Then breathing. Too fast. Too shallow. Then still. She pressed her palm flat to the wood. Didn't knock. Didn't move. Just listened. The breath faded. The room exhaled. And then nothing. She stayed there until footsteps approached. Not hers. His. They paused on the other side. And then, softly, she heard a voice say, "Not to her. Not to anyone. Quiet now. That's better." She stepped away. She didn't clean that floor again. Later, when the stories came, she never told anyone what she'd heard. Fiao. She just nodded when they asked if she thought he did it. And she said, "He killed quiet. That's what I know. I was there when it happened." Not all witnesses see. Some only hear and remember the exact moment a room stops breathing without ever making a sound. We were taught to trust the white coat. That crisp cloth, that steady hand, that clipboard with its quiet authority. Doctors don't kill. They cure. They comfort. They write in small, neat letters that say, "You're going to be fine." But Cream wore the same coat. He asked the same questions. He gave the same drops. And people died. Softly. Exactly as instructed. So we ask, what do we worship when we say, "Doctor, the knowledge, the kindness," or just the performance? Because Cream knew the ritual. He played it well, and no one looked behind the curtain until the applause had faded. He didn't chase anyone, didn't stab, didn't scream, didn't even run. He whispered. He offered bottles with calm labels. He explained with medical terms and never raised his voice. That's why no one stopped him. Because we're trained to fear noise, blood, knives, but poison whispers. And when it's handed to you in a clean glass bottle by a man who smells of soap and ink, you say thank you. What Cream did wasn't a rage. It was a system. And systems are harder to see when they speak quietly. They didn't even count the first girls. Didn't even call them victims. They were noted as accidents. Misuse? Women with tendencies. Women who probably took too much. Women who should have known better. But who gets to say what better means when your choices are pain or poison, shame or silence? Cream's murders weren't sudden. They were softened, filed away, dusted off, filed again. The deaths weren't counted because the lives weren't counted. And when you don't count a life, no one comes looking for justice. Cream didn't kill out of lust, not loudly, not for fun. He killed to control, to decide who deserved comfort, who deserved relief, who deserved to disappear quietly. And the most chilling part, he always smiled when they said thank you, as if they'd given him a gift by letting him choose how their story would end. He wasn't a man out of control. He was a man obsessed with it, and the world around him kept giving it to him. Because he said please, because he wore the right coat. Cream wasn't a mystery. He was visible, documented, educated. He gave hints. He wrote letters. He practically confessed. But no one moved. Because it's easier to believe in monsters than to see one drinking tea across from you. The truth is, he didn't hide. We did. Behind our systems, our disbelief, our faith in appearances, he knew how to sound right, and that's all it took. How many other men like him did we teach to smile before we taught them how not to harm? He wasn't alone. Not really. Someone filled the prescriptions. Someone ignored the patterns. Someone chose not to ask. The silence wasn't just his. It was everyone's. And it still is. Because even now, we believe credentials over instincts. We ask for proof when the feeling should have been enough. Cream died, but his methods didn't. They found new names, new coats, new drawers, and the whisper that told his patients to trust him still echoes in exam rooms that haven't learned to listen. They caught him, at last. Handcuffed, named, written into headlines, hung by the neck, case closed. But the door didn't close. The one behind his quiet office. The one where girls had whispered questions and never finished their sentences. It stayed open, not in wood, but in memory. Because the way he killed wasn't buried with him. It was institutional, methodical, almost respectable. No memorial, no trial transcripts with their stories at the center. Most names weren't said aloud. Some weren't known at all. They weren't the headline. He was the clever doctor, the poisoner, the man with degrees, but not the girl with the ribbon, or the sister who didn't believe the cough, or the maid who dusted the glass cabinet without ever knowing what was inside. History remembered his method, but it forgot their lives. And that feels like murder too. If he lived now, would we notice? Would we catch the drawer opening before the question ends? Would we test the bottle before the second drop? Or would he still speak softly? Still sign the paper clean? Still wear the right coat? We say we're smarter now. But smart isn't the same as safe. And silence, when dressed correctly, still gets invited in. You would, wouldn't you? You'd see the way he never blinked. You'd notice the way girls left quieter than they entered. You'd ask questions. You'd raise alarms. You wouldn't just nod at the prescription and file it away, except everyone else thought the same. And still, he kept writing names. Maybe the scariest part isn't that he fooled people. It's that no one wanted to be the one who asked first. Now, you're here, not on Lambeth Street, not in the back corridor, not holding a bottle, not waiting for the door to open. You're safe. The drawer's closed. The fire has burned out. You can let go of this hallway, Let go of the breath you didn't know you were holding since the girl asked, "Will it hurt?" It's quiet now, but not his kind of quiet. This one is yours. Some stories end sharply, but not this one. This one trails, like steam, like breath in cold air, like the soft hush of a page turned too gently to wake anyone. The girls he hurt don't knock anymore. They've left, one by one, step by step, and now the floorboards no longer creak. The prescriptions have stopped writing themselves. And you can sleep. The doctor is gone. And the only thing that follows you from this story is the warmth of knowing you listened, really listened, and still you're here, quiet, breathing, safe.